Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Suzanne Ryan, and I am a CCFM staff member. I'll be helping out with this session today. I'm going to be passing around a sign-in sheet today in just a minute. And if you need AIA credits, please list your AIA number and make sure that your email is legible. If you do not need AIA credits, we still need you to sign in. We will provide a certificate of attendance if you check the box on the sheet. We'd like to ask you to hold your questions until the end to ensure that our speaker can cover all of the required material. And on your desk, you'll notice an evaluation sheet. If you could fill that out, there is a back to it, and I can collect that at the end of the meeting today. Also, there's water over on the side for you if you'd like some, and mints in the front of you. Welcome to COV25 After the Disaster, Damage Strikes, Now What? This session is 1 hour and is certified with AIA for One Learning Unit, HSW, Health, Safety, and Wellness. Our speaker is Steve DeBlois. Steve has over 25 years of experience working in the cleaning and restoration industry. He is here representing our platinum sponsor, ServPro. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much to everybody with CCFM. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. I am Steve DeBlois. We're talking about after disaster, and my catalyst is in the room, so I think we should have hopefully some good conversations around this. Before we get deep into, how many of you have had damage of a significant nature in the facilities that you oversee? How many of you found that to be a career opportunity for you to shine and grow? Why isn't everybody's hand raised? I ask that. What challenges have you had in your facilities that didn't give you the opportunity to shine and grow? Would you mind sharing, anybody? Okay. Well, I ask that question because I look at it in my role. I like to work a lot in pre-planning. I have been in this industry, responded to floods, fires, wildfires, hurricanes, and other disasters. And the word disaster, I hear it constantly. Disaster, disaster, disaster. In the industries that we're in, overseeing people, communities, buildings, all are subject to damage, aren't they? Is all damage a disaster? Or is the disaster in how we respond to the need for damage recovery? The disaster often comes from not having a plan and knowing what we're doing, what should happen, when it should happen, trying to be proactive as opposed to reactive. Is it fair to say that reactivity is why we didn't feel the opportunity for us to shine? Because to manage and oversee my facility, if I own the building, if I own the properties, I'm responsible for these things, and I've reached out and engaged property management, facility management, and services as a building owner, what do I expect you to do when I have damage? Shine. Think about your insurance agents in your own personal lives. If you call your insurance agent, that is their opportunity when you call to shine, correct? To deliver a level of service. A service that isn't necessarily what you expect, but what that customer expects. When we're in someone's home, business, investment, do we treat it like it's our own? Or should we treat it like it's theirs and deliver an expectation to them as in what they had as a service provider? Can I come in and do what I want in your facility? Or should I do what you want in your facility in a way in which I might not be able to accomplish because of what your needs are at the moment because of lack of understanding? Oftentimes that lack of understanding is where the challenges come through, because we have, looking at the board here, we've got building owners, we have unit tenants, right? Risk management. Think about the insurance products that are involved. Think about how in this group, in my outside view I think, well, this would be easy. Everything should be simple and smooth, and you guys are just like every other organization. We're trying this over here, we're trying that over there, right? And things are a little bit different, and that's okay. But those concerns, think about it as a service provider. For me to deliver to you platinum level service, what you need in your facility, would it be helpful to know that your facility is different than the one I was at yesterday within the same organization with similar teams, right? So think about where we get into that and the work that we do. We have the insurance partners that are involved. Oftentimes we don't realize those insurance contracts. Those insurance contracts, think about homeowners. What does a homeowner realize about an insurance policy? Exclusions, right? And think about the exclusions, and they have expectations of nothing's excluded, right? Full coverage replacement insurance policies means everything's covered and I don't have a deductible. That's the perception. Heck, that's the want, right? That's what we all want. But the reality is, who owns our home? The bank. Who has fiscal responsibility to the bank beyond us? The insurance product, right? So understanding these things and who's involved in the accounting processes. I think about your facilities. A couple of things that I've heard in the last 24 hours has been, well, this happened, but we needed that to happen. Several of you have made those comments. And that happening, and it's interesting that all of those conversations, as I've been able to hear them and have chosen to hear them, is because the accounting department is driving our decisions. Makes sense to me. I have one of those in my house, right? We have planned obsolescence on our facilities. We already have routine plans going. We have systems in place. We have people and assets to be utilized. Looking at the outside, the finance department wants permission or forgiveness? Permission. We end up with forgiveness, and forgiveness is made or done. And if we think about if we don't go into these correctly, that's where litigation gets involved. I mean, in being in the mitigation industry that I'm in, I look at mitigation prevents litigation if done correctly. So even with the litigation to come in, think about the liabilities. The bank, the vested interest partners, right? It may not be a bank, depending on it. Well, it could be. I think you had mentioned some finance. Somebody had mentioned some finance. A lot of different stakeholders in every one of our facilities. And it's not just the people on the screen, but think about the human assets that help restore buildings. Indoor environmental consultants. With some of the facilities, I'm pretty sure we have items of concern in some of our facilities. The EPA might have some concerns with some of the things in our facilities that are just fine when left alone. And then others that need to be corrected, pre-existing conditions and things of that nature. Think about the engineers, the importance of the engineer and the value to their facility. Who knows their facility better than anybody else? Those engineers, and they are some of the best consultants as a restorer, some of the best consultants we can have. There was a story of a facility today where someone had ducting from a ventilation system, concrete tubing going through the floors in a building. Not at all uncommon. It's not at all uncommon. I used to do HVAC cleaning, and you could go through these tunnels, and they'd literally be this much air passing through a pipe this big because they're so full of debris. But think about it, with modern technology coming in, some of those areas are hidden in a building. And one person that's been there for 35 years, that retired yesterday, knew about it. Where are the blueprints? Where do the people find what we have? Because think about when we have building damage, ceilings falling down, do we need structural engineers, architects would be the right word, I guess? So as this I want to challenge people to think about being in your own home. Laying there in bed with your family. You get how that is. But as you're there, the peace of mind that you have, the comfort that you're there. Now imagine that none of it is available to you. because something happened, who would you blame, even if it's not your fault? We had some of those conversations that happens in our business, right? That's not even a home. We still blame. So as those emotions take over, how many of us have had these damages and gotten emotion ourselves, and we're just the overseers, right? Why are you emotional? It's somebody else's problem. But it's our responsibility, right? We have that opportunity to shine. We're not sure if we've done all of our things correct. We're in the spotlight. Why isn't this our opportunity to shine and go, yeah, I got it. Here we go. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be challenging. People are going to make mistakes. People are going to argue. That's life. So how do we put it together to make our life or their lives better through the efforts of ourselves? And looking through, I look at documentation. I brought up insurance in the last world. I work with several thousand insurance professionals on an annual basis for almost a quarter of a century. And it's a staggering idea that a lot of the people we buy insurance from have never read their insurance policies. And they sell and service insurance policies. Interpretation's different than reading, but think about how many of you have read your insurance policies. Have you sat down with your business brokers, your insurance brokers, to understand the exclusions, right? And what our responsibilities are in response? Because in part of insurance and risk, we probably have things that we've made promises to be reimbursed, right? And do we have those documents proving and validating? And even with the insurance agreements, did your insurance broker read the leases and contracts that you have in buildings, whether you own them or maybe sublet or responsibilities? But think about what the responsibilities of building ownership and insurance policies. They go together. They're not separate. As a homeowner, I just purchased and redid the insurance with my wife on our home. My wife was baffled at some of the questions that I would ask the agents. Kind of like you, if I took over one of your facilities, you'd ask me a lot of questions that would baffle, right? Even me, for sure. I don't do what you do. I don't know what you know. I had to teach my wife what she didn't know and what I do for a living. And guess what she didn't want to hear? Anything other than what? What drives families, why we're all here, the core of it. So think about the importance of understanding the insurance policy, what the responsibilities, and most importantly, and you nailed it, is exclusions, right? Inclusion is narrow, exclusion is broad. And even in the inclusions, there are things we have responsibility for preemptive damages and response, making sure that we have scoped our properties. We understand what the condition of the property is before damage happens. Because if we don't have clearly documented condition of the property, well, how do we know what before the damage happened was? Because insurance policies, many of you I'm sure know, don't repair the building. They make the bank whole. They don't make the building back to its pre-existing condition unless it's accurate in the condition was which the carrier thought it to be, right? They think that wall is in great condition, but if they see that damage happened and what the damage that happened in this building didn't affect that wall, and you want to get that wall fixed, that's not their responsibility. And that little situation oftentimes turns into the vendor may be doing work that they aren't going to get compensated for. Or maybe the vendor did work and you're not going to get reimbursed for, right? It can go all different ways. So think about your properties. Are they video documented? In today's world, video documentation is a great tool. There are tools we've seen, the real estate industry uses it, the restoration industry uses it, the insurance industries are using it. Tools like Matterport or DocuSketch. Tools, if you've ever done a virtual tour of a real estate tour, that's a Matterport system where you can literally go through the building and zoom in and see things. And that documentation validates the condition of our building. Well, as someone comes in later, you think about that validation that it's there, that damage could be there for 100 years. and not a problem. Or that damage happened suddenly, accidentally. And sudden accidental are the words insurance carriers use, right? So with this, and think about the authorizations to be on property. Who can authorize your service providers to be there? All of the folks in the trade show would be glad to help you. Are they authorized to be on your property? Do they understand the agreements, the needs on each property? What I heard, a story that hit me, and this one resonates, is $200,000 in damage to a property that's valued at $1 million, but the dirt's worth more than the building. What do? I know what my bank, the Bank of Steve, tells me to do, but I also know what Steve, the restorer, wants to do. And that's not necessarily the best decision. For the contracts, for the finance department, for the customer, the building, each other. And understanding that we have the right people, right contracts, service level agreements. Think about the things that we sign without reading, Wi-Fi access, and the consequences that we find if we would have read it, we probably never would have done it to begin with, right? Or been very cautious or approached it differently. So those contracts that you have, those contracts can be with mechanical companies, they can be with art restoration, they can be with other service providers for a lot of different reasons. Your sprinkler companies, the alarm monitoring companies, people that have to be notified about what's going on in your buildings, safety and security, making sure that vendors are vetted appropriately. Could you imagine the wrong person being in the right situation through no fault of their own? They've got a history with a mystery. Even under accusation, they will be put in a bad situation. We all would be, right? Little things, even vendors having appropriate insurance policies, making sure that they're done, making sure that they have their cord forms with documentation that you need to validate that, coming from the correct sources, not directly from the individuals. Thinking about, too, is how we're going to address and respond. Oftentimes, property damage is referred to and gone in for the estimating platform in an electronic format, line-by-line detail. Well, that's fine for small projects. That doesn't work for projects that should be focused on efficiency, time, and materials. Time and materials need to start at the beginning, not at the end of a project, because that creates hindsight, and hindsight creates a different story than truth. So having these information, people getting out, knowing, documenting what we don't have to do, what we do have to do, identifying the concerns, all of the concerns, and how those concerns affect how long that it's going to take and how much it is going to cost. The reserves insurance companies need, your risk department needs, even the vendors that respond to this. I need to know that. How am I going to fulfill a project and a commitment on a project if I don't know what it entails? I need to know the costs. I might need to bring out bonds. I might need to bring out additional policies to cover you and me, right? We had an excellent presentation when I got here yesterday afternoon in the main session. Go back to that. I strongly encourage you to go back to that presentation and get yourselves familiar with the standard documentation. Reach out to experts, at times licensed experts in those arenas, and get an education with them. Your brokers would be great. I would assume your insurance brokers would be glad to do that with you. If not, one that's looking to do business might have that conversation with you to earn your trust. But take the time to learn, to know. I challenge restoration vendors to do the same things. Because if your services get reimbursed, if it's an insurance policy, guess who gets paid? If they don't get reimbursed, guess who doesn't get paid, right? Even if I eventually get paid, it's less money, just in the efforts of not collecting, right? Things of that nature. There's a win-win in all of this. And that opportunity to shine, that's even more. When we respond, excellent service, we retain our customers, internal as well as external. We show leadership to the community. Because when we look at the community and you're able to get back on your feet ahead of everybody else in the community, especially if it's a disaster environment, a hurricane or flood, which hurricane is a big part of this, hitting hurricane a lot of these. But think about it. When you're the first ones to open service, open the school, open whatever facility, and everybody else isn't there yet because you had your things in place, your customers are happy to be when they come see you, aren't they? Think about it. Even working around the schedule to have a mass may be the most important thing we need to do over the next 3 months, because that means we need a secondary location, right? So we can work on the project. We might even need to have times for certain people to tour. This is where we were, this is where we're going, and here's where we are. To show and brag, hey, it's been tough. Here's what we're going through, and here's what the good work that we're doing. So making sure that everybody is documented all the way through. I cannot stress enough to know this beforehand. I'm leaving this group to speak to property management group, asking the same questions. And the interesting is this property management group, Florida's a concern. June 1st is hurricane season, and we're already at May 1st, and they're just now thinking about planning. Sound personal too? I think about myself. I don't plan for these things. Ask my wife where the generator was when Hurricane Helene hit us in South Carolina, North Carolina. It was in a garage, well tested, and no fuel. Right? My time to shine as a husband and a dad. And he had to go stand in line for fuel. And they didn't get power for 4 days because I couldn't go get fuel. Right? My facility, my home, your facility, same thing. We are the responsible parties. Everybody's looking to us to have all of the answers, and none of us do. But we have each other. Reach out, talk to each other, communicate up front. Because when damage happens and you have unvetted contractors of any nature, you have contractors coming in the wrong order. There's nothing like sending a crew to go stand at a gate while the security company waits for somebody to show up to get the gate open. And we have that downtime. That's okay. But think about what we have to make sure that information is communicated through the first notice of loss, including service level agreements, master service level agreements, prices, pre-negotiated prices. Don't come in and start line item detail on a large project, even a small project. You should come in at time and materials, thinking with foresight. Before you come to my property, Steve, I need you to understand that that's what I expect. Review those agreements with the vendors making the promises to you before you need to do it. Clarify they understand. If you hear of change and turnover, reach out. Make sure the replacement is part of your team, because that's when we have to adjust. Your team, you should know your team. Hopefully you will know your team before anything happens, so you can start. The relationship's there. I see your number on my phone. I answer it even if I'm in a conference. I'm not going to tell you how many phone calls I've ignored this week, but you're my priority, not them. But I had to screen my calls to make sure I didn't make that mistake, right? Understanding that it's there, because if I don't answer the call if I miss the wrong call, I've ruined an entire relationship. Because when do you need response? When you call my phone, you're not calling to ask me what the weather is like. You're not concerned about how my day is. You are personally, I'm sure, but you have problems bigger than I can imagine at the moment. And I need to be there for you, and I want to be there for you the way you need me to be. Not the way I want to be, the way you need me to be in your facility for that need. If I walk into a school environment with children, it's different than a medical facility, which is different than an office or a computer room with computer hardware, towers. Fire suppression systems may be different. Think about the medical facilities and the schools, just those two things. Gymnasiums, conversations on gym floors. I've heard a lot of that. I actually left you last year in Nashville to go to a northeastern state, and coincidentally ran into a manager with this organization in the Northeast. And that's the whole, he shared floor after floor after floor that they had done mitigation restoration on, and then literally had to come in and rip it all out and replace it. To me, that's a double billing. If we've got the ACC tournament, the NCAA basketball tournament, sure, we might save a floor and rip it out next month. But if it's the high school gym floor, how much money do we want to spend to restore it? What condition should it be in? Maybe we have materials of a suspicious nature the EPA has concerns about, right? Little things of that nature. What are the priorities? What do we have to do? What's the current and future use? Do you already have a plan? Maybe one of the particular gym floors I got to see, it's like, why didn't you rip that out before the damage? We didn't have the budget. We needed it to go through. We were going to replace it in 2027 maybe. Okay. What do we have to do? Again, getting ahead of the finance department. Mitigation is focused on stabilization. I challenge to say begin with the end in mind, but in restoration, especially in the commercial arena, beginning with the end in mind is a happy customer willing to pay, but how we get there is not the same because there's so many other factors that are involved. I mean, we may have, as I said, the security and gate service that won't allow us in, the alarm monitoring company that is the one responsible for turning off the water after a fire. You know, the sprinkler company, maybe the sprinkler company and alarm monitoring company, are they aligned? Do you know where your shutoff valves are? And not the one at the office, all of them. Someone shared this morning in this group that they had a fire in a property, and they actually on the property had a tank with water, so when the fire department ran out with water, they didn't have to leave. Only one person was aware of that. And when did they learn it? After the fire department left. Not the best time, right? Opportunities missed. The sprinkler systems and fire suppression systems, when they are released, you know, water going, who can cut it off? I mean, sometimes we literally have to wait, right? And wait. Chiller systems, those are always fun. You know, a lot of the maintenance issues, the pipes that aren't wrapped correctly, the condensation going on inside, how much of those are pre-existing conditions. Well, things I might be able to save and dry aren't necessarily good for insulating if once we cause structural integrity, the integrity is changed in that. If we don't address those correctly, we're already in a moisture-controlled environment. We have even bigger problems if we don't focus on that quickly. The air handling systems. Air handling systems, the lungs of a building, often most neglected and over a neglected piece of the structure, right? That's why those pipes, the concrete pipe, it's this big around, but there's dust in it. It allows this much airflow. When we get that cleaned out, the building runs more efficiently, more effectively. We improve the quality of the building, but oftentimes that's done after the fact. Artwork through your facilities. Art, I can spell the word, A-R-T. My daughter is a wonderful artist. Your cathedrals are full of beautiful artwork. I don't appreciate it as much as many of you, because we all have a different perception, don't we, on what art is and what beauty is and what things of importance are. Would it be important to have the right people handling these things? And some of these items can be in the tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and you want someone that can, I just described, managing that. Where are they storing it? How are they storing it? How are they protecting it? What are they doing? The stained glass, a lost art. We have plastic. I mean, the artwork is just your art. Your buildings are art, right? Works of art, literally. And when we work through these environments, my dentist does stained glass, but not quite the same as what yours is, right? And understanding and having the specialists. Again, a trade show full of these individuals that have solutions for you. Some of them have that do very similar things, have better solutions than their competitors. Doesn't mean either of the competitors can't work together and can't work with you, but some of them have better solutions for different facilities. Know what those opportunities are. Document. We have a gentleman in the room in the trade show. I saw blueprints all over the place. After Helene, there's a particular county in northeast Tennessee that was inundated when the Nolichucky River, the Tow River, North Carolina, Nolichucky into Tennessee, flooded, and it flooded the archives building. Actually, all of the death records in this community were submerged in flood water. And you know what the county did with the records? They're in the dumpster. Can you imagine the opportunity for someone to shine is now in a dumpster? Can you imagine the challenges, especially when the solution was under their nose? Literally, right there in town, the opportunity to take those documents and put them in a refrigerated truck and have them reprocessed. What would that do for that county? Because there's some folks going to have some challenges for a while, right? And think about the archives and things that you may have in record in your facilities that would be a bigger priority than the floors. Know your priorities. That's huge. What are the priorities in your facility? Who's going to handle those priorities in the way that you need and want so those items maintain their value? I mean, I might have a Sharpie to fix that up, but I don't know that that would be appropriate on quite a few items. Data recovery beyond that. Think about your electronic data recovery, your backup systems. Are you aware that when computers get wet, that data can still be recovered? When they've burned, that data can still be recovered. There may be expense to it, but it may be worth it. And then let's look at your organs. And we can keep going, and the bells, and think about how complicated that can be. Taking them apart, disassembling, shipping them overseas, and then have to come back and be reassembled, and the time that would be included. What it takes, even simple guitars and violins and simple things. Do we want to dry them in an environment with the rest of the building, or should they be separated? Should they be handled by the appropriate people? Gibson would do a little bit better guitar restoration than I would, right? Just to keep it in there. Sometimes that's, I said many times, that's what should happen. And then think too, do we have times where we have to evacuate a building, we can't use it for a while? With children, adults, members of our community that may depend on us to be where they are? Think about what we would do to help people. Do we have places for them to go while their place of expectance is damaged? And through that process, where's your plan B for housing, schools, and other environments that you manage. And that can get difficult. There are companies that specialize in temporary housing. What's sufficient for you? What level do you want to offer to your customers and based on their situation? Even beyond, imagine your textiles. The textiles that go just in many ways, not just clothing, but the tapestries, your pew liners, the cushions and things of that nature. Making sure that the right people that know how to take care of these, even with the processes to take care, your typical dry cleaner, if you will, or cleaners, they're not used to cleaning damaged items. I mean, what do they clean? Right? The things we take to that cleaner. And then when we take, say it's a smoke damage, and you take lots of garments, you literally give them a month's worth of work in one day. Can they handle the products, the chemicals they use? Can they store them for the period of time? Do they know the proper processes to remove odor? Because that is a big concern, right? Especially after a fire, or any damage for that matter. Odor comes with experience, oftentimes. The heightened awareness of the situation. So we have to address real odors as well as odors of a heightened awareness or a psychological nature. Think about it as an odor. How many in the room like the smell of chocolate? How many in the room like the smell of cinnamon? How many in the room like the smell of gasoline? I'm not surprised. But think about those scents. 2 people said gasoline. Why do you like the smell of gasoline? There's always a good answer. Motocross, racing, time with the family. It's a heightened awareness. People relate that when they walk back into the facility, especially if they've been a part of the trauma in the beginning. What do they walk back? What's the first thing they do? They smell it. Even if it's not there. So working through these, making sure that these things are addressed and communicated, it turns into a collaborative effort. We're all working to a common goal. Because that common goal, there are no odors. There are no odors because there's no source left. That means the building is no longer wet. The building is no longer contaminated with anything that would cause an odor. The only odors they should smell coming back in would be those of a cleaning product, disinfectant, or more likely, paint, new carpet, right? That's what they're smelling, but what are they walking back into? Emotion, memory, trauma, if you will. Because after damage, if you think, the phases of grief apply to damage in property. How many of you been through the phases of grief fixing your properties? Yeah, we all go through it. So making sure, too, that when people arrive, we've labeled out the appropriate people to arrive for the situation that we have. And when they do, they know where to go. Which particular building has the problem? How do they access that building? When was the building built? Do we understand that even if it was built post-1979, that we still potentially install asbestos-containing materials into buildings because manufacturers we still import those materials, right? The challenge is that under the finance department, why do we have that? We built that building in 2005. Well, what was put into it? And we have that responsibility to know before we remove it out. That's the way things work. We need to know who to communicate with. Think about on-site. Churches of any nature are some of my favorite projects to work on. They're also some of the most challenging because they're so important spiritually, emotionally to us, right? Everybody has say Everybody feels ownership, right? How can we give that to them and understand also who is in charge? So the workers, how many of you have 15 people grab you because when you walk down the hall? Imagine your vendor going through that same thing. Would it be helpful that they're not grabbing me? And they know who, if they are grabbing one of my team, which one to grab, if that's appropriate. When I say grab, I mean need, right? And reach out to. But understanding what we have to do to organize this. Sometimes we have to navigate through I'm called the F-250 and clipboard crowd. The chasers that often bring in liability by not knowing what you need versus what they want. So thinking with the ingress, egress, where do we go? Who are we meeting? How are they going to know it's us, and how are we going to know that it's them? Because a lot of times, and some of these can get very chaotic, right? And in that chaos, do you have contacts for your utility companies for power, water, sewer, gas? Those may need to be turned off, may need to be turned on. Are they available? I need water quite frequently in the cleaning process, right? Do we have security? Who can be in where? Who can handle what? There are facilities that take years to pass clearance just to be on. Go work for NASA. They don't let you, it's not a 3-week process. It takes a little bit of time. So what levels? Who can go where? Because I'm sure there are areas of privacy. You know, I was talking about some blueprints. Are there things on your blueprints that maybe certain people don't need to see or be aware of? I don't know the intimacies and details of all of your facilities, but I'm going to assume there are places that need to be kept more private than others. And privacy is important, especially in today's world when we're all walking around with disclosure documentation, right? We can let everybody know everything anymore as to what's going on. So think about who can be on the property to protect you, to make sure that as we go through these, that you implement a plan. Prioritized lists are necessary. Proper prior planning prevents pitifully poor performance. And with the proper prior planning, I would also suggest practice. We are a nation in this need. I'm going to assume our brothers to the north also have compassion to teach people how to get out of buildings in traumatic situations, right? So we know how to get out of the building, whether there's a tornado or a hurricane. I was warned about with the voice of God coming into the room today. I'm good with that. But think about, we know where to go to be safe. We know how to get out of the building. We have those plans. We practice those plans. We execute those plans. What's your plan to get back in the building after that damage happens? How do you propose to execute the plan so you can shine? Because when damage happens to your building and you manage that damage to not have a disaster or minimize the disasters, you're going to shine. And when you do that, what happens to your customers, your team members, and your leaders? So how, and the last question, I guess kind of get into question and answer, but how can I help you with plans? What more information can I give you? And please open up conversation.
Yeah, so thank you, because I think one of the key things is being prepared, right? And so my experience recently was we had a rectory that caught fire, and so it was put out, we had a structural engineer come in, but as we're getting ready now to go to the next phase of the rebuild, what are the things that we should be, well, what are the first things that we should do? Like, what are the first, besides stopping the bleeding and stopping the
Always have in your back pocket. All right, so fire, we'll start with fire, and fire I'm going to say is kind of helpful because how do you put a fire out? With water. So I'm going to suggest, not all, but many fires are fire and water damage. So we know fire obviously causes the most damage, right? The heat of the fire causes the most damage. So first, I'm a person of start at source and work my way out. So beginning in the beginning is find the key decision makers. That's the first thing I need to know. And those key decision makers may be my facility manager, it may be the risk manager, and the accounting department simultaneously. We can get together a whole lot easier than that often sounds, right? So think about as we arrive, one, where do I go? Who am I speaking with? From there, we have to do a walkthrough and identify what we don't have to do. So we're going to hit our area. Here it is. If it's fire, can we say that items that are charred are a lower priority than those that are not charred? So once the char goes, we've got cause and origin, so we have fire department we need to work with. Oftentimes, fire department, if we had fire here, in a facility like this, they'll do their inspection right here and we can start cleaning elsewhere. So I need that decision maker and someone who can understand and authorize a fluid process. Because sometimes going back to fix it when you show up the next day and somebody else authorized, now we're back to plan challenge again. So making sure that the people that are there can authorize the documentation and understand the service level agreements to hold me accountable, because I want to come in and do it all. But the service level agreement says mitigate, stabilize, don't go beyond this point, because we have decisions to make. We need a pulse. This isn't about making them walk out the door healthy and whole again. This is about keeping them so we can manage the triage. We need this building, we need this facility, we need decisions to be made, we need to know where that is. So that first part is information. Understanding also what the true priorities are. If the priority is not the charred material and it's getting a generator operating so we have power, maybe that's the first thing we focus on. Priorities. Then from the priorities, we can figure out what the areas are. And the areas, I would focus on saving salvageable items. Contents are a stronger priority many times than structure. I know our structures can change that statement because of the value and what they are. But contents, they're in the way and they're also valuable, right? Prioritizing how this works. What are we going to do with the contents? Testing, making sure they will clean, they won't clean. Are they worth cleaning? That decision being done as a test and demonstration. Not I did that yesterday and I'm going to do it again today. I've had success in the past. That doesn't mean it's always going to work, right? So having that testing done, that shows you, validates the cleanability of things and sets a realistic plan. We identify the priorities. Hey, that's a fresco, Steve, don't touch it. Okay. You want to put it under containment and preserve it? Let's contact the Chicago Conservation Center for Art or whatever, and they are going to coach us through that process. Okay. From there, we're still looking at moisture, right? Contents are going. Your moisture inspections. What's wet? How wet is it? If I know what's wet, how wet it is, that's going to let me know about how long it's going to take to dry and what equipment I need to do that. Now I'm setting reserves. What do we have to do to set back? I'm also getting you in that not to exceed that, this is about what it's really going to be. Am I going to shoot over? Yes. I'd rather tell you it's going to cost $1,000 and come in at $900 than tell you $1,000 and come in at $1,100, right? So we're going to have to set that buffer. Will we agree upon a fair buffer? It might take us 48 hours, 72 hours to figure out what fair is until we know what's going on with the building, not just for today, because this is stabilization. We're going to fix it later. you're also now triggering up what you need to do to start lining up when you leave me and I start doing the work we're agreeing on. And when we go and we realize that the numbers are at a certain amount, not only is it the not to exceed, let's call that number just for a number, say $5,000 not to exceed to stabilize the environment. Okay? This is going to exceed. Now it's time to start changing, bringing in the next protocol. And that means we need to bring in current and future use of the building, right? What are we doing here? When I do communicate the not to exceed, I've got to get permission, if you will, to go beyond. If I want to get paid, that's something that you coaching me to do that is protecting me and you. It's a two-way street. I have to remind you, you have to remind me. What is your deductible amount? For some of you, I've heard $2,500, I've heard $5,000, I've heard $50,000, I've heard bigger numbers. Well, looking in the industries, $50,000, $100,000 are trigger points for vested partners, insurance and things of that nature. When we start hitting those numbers, that may change who's able to service. For capital, I can go broke fixing a building, right? If I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not capitalized. I need to make sure that I have whatever it takes, bonds, additional insurance premiums. I might have to bring in security teams, depending on how damaged the building is, the size and scope of the environment. And in that security, do you want me to use my partners or do you already have partners? You might have a security agreement that may save you 50%. Well, of course that's the security company we want to use, right? And you already have a contract with them. That's very valuable to me.
When do you determine how much of the finishes to take out if you're in the remediation portion? Where do you draw the line? You got smoke, you got smell, odors, et cetera.
That line is in the pre-testing phase. I preferably would have you vested partner, anybody invested in this, going through, and if it's a cleaning process after fire, we're making those decisions together. I will demonstrate to you through pre-testing. This is my process, this is what I'm doing, because think of my pre-testing, I'm determining what will clean, what won't clean, what's questionable, right? And in those items, you and I could have look at the exact same thing and have a complete difference of opinion, and it doesn't make either one of us wrong. What's the clarifying factor to that? And most likely that should be in your court. It's just because I say I can do it doesn't mean you want it or need it or it should happen. So in that testing, it truly is the time to make that. If you skip that step, you're now on a defense.
And what are you testing?
Cleanability and moisture, all of the above. Moisture, I'm going to suggest at all materials, all times, because we have water environment. We need to know unaffected versus affected. That gives us the baseline of what we have to have as control, so we know where we are, where we were, and where we need to be. That's the moisture control. Very quick, easy. Is that fair to say for many of you on moisture inspections? If not, I can do other classes in the future. But with that, the cleaning part is the key. With moisture meters, we can tell you whether it's wet, not, and how wet it is, right? The only way we can tell you if it'll clean or not is to go through the process of cleaning.
And what's the cleaning process of fire?
It depends on the item.
Glass,
Porous, non-porous, semi-porous.
glass, drywall.
Drywall, if it's heat damp, you can clean it. Flat paint, dry soot will come off pretty easy. Wildfire, that type of thing. From even when it does have staining, if you wash it, rinse it, dry it, set it, then you can paint, or you seal and paint. How many coats, that type of thing. As far as, say, textiles, you'll look for, make sure for shrinkage, color fastness, and cleanability is literally, think about, we have 1,000 chairs. I only need to clean one. maybe the top 10, most dirty, most complicated, to determine the process, also how long it's going to take. Let me know how much it'll cost me to do it. Can I fit within the parameters? Are we better off to say, hey, wait, they're going to come out of this facility, you're going to clean them, we're going to replace, put new ones in this facility and store those over here for us in the other facility, because they're still your chairs, right? So navigating, but again, it's a show. If it is a gloss painted wall, I'll wash that. A gloss painted wall versus a window, quite frankly, they're both non-porous surfaces, right? So cleanability is going to be fairly close. If it's a piece of furniture, I might have a granite or stone type top. Well, that would be a polished stone. Underneath of it would be unpolished and more porous. I have the responsibility to test and look and think, is that piece, the outside of that piece of furniture may be covered in a finish, a lacquer, a varnish. It may be a modern polyurethane. It may be treated with tung oil. You have to understand what that is, and taking care of my house versus one of your churches is going to be completely different most of the time. Think about the art, just the value of the craftsmanship and things of that nature compared to, my wife buys rugs from ruggables.com. A little bit different. And we would also look at that. If it's a Ruggables, you may say, Steve, for $1,000, we can roll them all up and throw them away and put brand new ones in here. Well, that's your money. That's how we should spend it. Communication, talking, and demonstration of the talks as fact, because all of this would have to be documented. So you can say, finance department, here's what I think we can do, right? What do we have to do to get there? As a cleaner, it's in my advantage to take this test cleaning. I've already told you it lets me know whether I can do it or not. I can communicate that to my team because they have to replicate what I've done with you. And it also lets me know that if I accept a responsibility to clean something, I charge you to clean it and it doesn't clean, guess what you're not going to send to me when I charge you for that? Payment, correct? Because I guarantee it to be clean and I also have a guarantee it to be deodorized. If it's not deodorized, that means I haven't removed the source. If I haven't removed the source, then I haven't cleaned it. You with me?
Do you find yourself working mostly with the facility manager or the insurance adjuster?
I would prefer both, and the facility manager would be the one. Facility manager.
Do they defer to the adjuster because the adjuster ultimately makes the decision what's getting paid?
It's your building.
Yeah.
It's not theirs. It's their insurance policy, not their building. What you choose to do with your building is what you choose. Whether they reimburse for that or not would be the difference. But if it came into...
Those master service agreements, a lot of them will say, in an insurance claim, I'm contracting with Company X agrees that this is, when insurance is involved, they're going to accept or somehow understand what the insurance is agreeing to pay and accept those dollars, right? Because a lot of times we get into, that's where you get a problem, right? Where
Yes.
You're billing for something and the insurance is saying we're not going to pay for that.
Right. The more we communicate those things up front, get it out on the table, the bigger we win. Because that's, in my opinion, that's where the disasters come. Yep, that's the disaster. If we get it up front, think about mitigation to stabilization. It's a small number for a reason. It says put a Band-Aid on this, keep them alive, get them back to the emergency room, and manage triage. Because we don't need a neurosurgeon putting stitches in my wrist, right? And we don't need somebody who does sutures doing brain surgery or trying. Ladies, gentlemen, any questions outside of the obvious? I thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity.